I want to welcome you all. I'm Mary Pavlidis. I'm the Honorary Secretary of the United Arts Club. I want to welcome you all this evening. So the wonderful Alan is going to interview Brendan and his beautiful wife, Margie. So Alan is a very interesting man. Alan had a wonderful career and then he retired from it.
At 60?
At 60, yeah, yes, that's why you look so young. And then Alan became, he was always interested in the arts anyway, but he, just before COVID, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Alan started to interview artists for Archive, no? Oh, is that better? Okay. So Alan started to interview artists for the archive. So he has the Artist Well. So the Artist Well is available to everybody on YouTube.
It is, yes.
And he has how many artists at this stage?
170.
170 artists, all listed. So you can choose whichever artist you want to thing. But I want to welcome all the members from the AIB Art Society who came here this evening, and oh hi, and very impressed with the United Arts Club, very impressed. So we hope to see them back. I couldn't put my fingers or hands on a membership form, but anyway, we'll have to correct that. So Alan has a lot of experience of interviewing people. So he's going to explain all about, he's going to explain Brendan, and he's going to tell you a little bit of his background, and he's going to, so we will all just sit back and enjoy and relax.
Good evening. Hello. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the United Arts Club. It's my privilege to interview Brendan this evening. I must state first that I am not a journalist, I'm not an interviewer. This all happened by a terrible mistake, but a lovely mistake. And what it's done is it's opened up doors to me that I would never have dreamt of before in terms of meeting some wonderful people. And Brendan Lynch is just another one that I'm delighted to meet and also record. So let's start. I mean, I'm going to ask a number of questions, but equally I'd like you to think about some questions that you'd like to ask Brendan as well, okay? So there will be a Q&A at the end. And also do bear in mind that copies of this book are available outside. They're €15 each, and they'll be for sale straight after this, okay? So if anyone would like a copy, if you don't have one already. So let me start by asking Brendan, why did you become a writer?
I had a very good English teacher in the secondary school in Nina in Tipperary. I cycled 7 miles every morning into school, so I was determined to get the best of all of what I learned. But he introduced us to Samuel Johnson and Charles Lamb and all the English essayists, Hazlitt and all those people, not so many Irish. And sometimes coming home cycling, I would read the essays of Charles Lamb, and then I would be thinking about London, where they lived, great big bustling city, a big change to Tumivara, where I lived, where there was, I'd say about 300 people. And I sort of fantasized about writing. That was the beginning, but I was very, very fortunate. My father was a guard sergeant in a small village. My mother was a school teacher. She had to retire when she married. But they had free books, and there was no other house in the village had books. They had Cass's Encyclopedia and the works of Charles Dickens and all this sort of stuff. So that was a great help as well.
Very good. I'm amazed by your work ethic, because I understand you start work at 7 in the morning till midday every day, which is extraordinary.
Yeah,
am I allowed to tell people what age you are?
Well,
maybe you would.
yeah. I was hoping you wouldn't ask. I was asking Mary to build this as a celebration of my 85th birthday.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
And do you know what's wonderful about that also is the fact that, you know, most of us say, oh, I must write a book, but I will when. And what I found amazing about Brendan was that he actually wrote 4 books from the age of 75, since he's turned 75, which is a remarkable achievement, so well done for that. And I think you're on your 50th.
Thank you, yeah, well, number 11.
Oh, number 11, yes, but in terms of you've done forward.
Yeah, but the reason that I work starts so early is because I'm a very ill-disciplined person. So it's from the opposite reason, in fact. But and if I don't start the bloody stuff, then I don't do it. And if I look out the window and it's 8 o'clock or 5 seconds past 8, I think the day is gone. So you'll all understand that when you get to my age. But never mind. So that's why I work hard. And the other reason I work hard is maybe I never worked hard before. So
So let's go back to your childhood, because you were born into a staunch nationalist, very Catholic family, and I suppose surroundings as well. And from reading this book here, it would appear as if life only happened between masses and rosaries. There's nothing else in life really other than the mass and the rosary. And God forgive you if you didn't go to either one. So how was that? You found it obviously very repressive, and that's why you went away. How was it, for you in those days?
Well, I didn't mind it at the time because that's what I grew up with. But then as I grew older, one of the mother's friends, the first man she Don Street, had been killed in Killaloe in the 1920s, and she was a rabid nationalist. That's about the best way to describe her. But so I was brought up to believe all these people were heroes. And then I started to read a bit more, and I found out that the guy who was our hero, the young man who had asked her out to dance, he himself had killed somebody before he was attacked. So the more I delved, the more I became skeptical about all the various isms, not just nationalism, but the Catholicism and all the other isms. And and at that time in Ireland it was very, very restricted. I think there was 5,000 books on the censorship list. Even Brendan Lynch was banned in my time. I had to go to, I was in London before I could get a copy of his book, which I brought back for him to sign. So for me they were very difficult times. I was a sort of a free spirit. And like I suspect most attendees of the Arts Club are. But so I didn't like to leave my own country, but I felt I had no choice. So I went to England.
Yeah. So before you went to England though, when you left school, I think your first job was in a bean factory in Thurles, wasn't it?
Oh yes.
Yeah, so I've done my research now, Brendan.
You're very good. I hope you don't know any of his friends down there. Yeah.
So not that you need to go into any detail, but what did you do before you went to London?
Oh yeah, well that's, I worked in this office in CIE in the bean factory, and then I worked at Kingsbridge in our Houston station in CIE for 5 years, and it was silly work, just playing about with bits of paper, and for the princely sum of €5, £5 a week, you couldn't hardly live on it. And the other thing was I cycled.
Yes.
I used to have to cycle to school, and because I was good at the cycling, I became a cycle racer. So that was a very good outlet, and I brought that with me when I came up to Dublin, and rode in some races, and one or two good races in Dublin. So that was a big element of my life. And then I wanted to do more, so that's when I became even more curious.
Okay. So
outside.
So when you left CIE Kingsbridge, was that when you went over to London?
That's right.
And
Yeah.
what exactly precipitated that? And had you something planned to go to?
Not really. No, I had reached my limit. I really resented the authoritarianism, the power of the Catholic Church. I really did, and I couldn't wait to leave the place. But the big problem was my parents. My mother was, as I said, was very religious, very nationalistic. The last place she would want any of her sons to go was to pagan England, where we'd be led astray. And of course, I was hoping I would. But anyhow, that's how that. I have a passage there, and I won't describe it, about leaving Ireland, and it wasn't difficult, and you see all the people with their suitcases tied together with bloody bits of twine, and coming up, someone from the west of Ireland with nobody to say goodbye to them, and mothers holding their children up, will you be back for Christmas, Daddy, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So that was tough. But it was difficult settling in London first, but I had a job already in the underground, the London transport.
Oh, right.
So I walked into a job which paid me £12 a week. It was a daft side better than what I was getting at home, you know.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And at what point did you suddenly realise that you were becoming a sort of a pacifist, that you were, you know, very anti-nuclear bombs and all this kind of thing?
Yeah.
You were a bit of an activist, didn't you?
Yeah, one of my heroes before I left Ireland I'd read about was Brendan Lynch, and he opposed, he was against the First World War, and he helped people who didn't want to be press ganged into the army, and for his pains he was sentenced to 6 months, and he also lost his job at either Oxford or Cambridge. So I said, there's a practicing Christian, he'll be fine for my next hero. So then when I went there, I read all his books, not the heavier ones, but the books of essays in praise of idleness and all this sort of stuff. And I had a great respect for him. And of course, in the 1960s, he was involved in forming the C&D movement, and he was back in Brixton again. He got a week for his part in the sit-down demonstration. So he immediately went higher in my estimation.
And I gather there was an occasion where you settled yourself by being a guest of Her Majesty, and not at a garden party in Buckingham Palace, but in Brixton prison.
No, I was invited to stay, and they didn't give me any choice. What happened was I was arrested at a demonstration, and the judge's name was Judge Barraclough. I always remember, a very benign gentleman, and he fined me £5, which is the normal thing, but I hadn't done anything, so I wouldn't pay the £5. That was my logic at the time. So I was a great believer in logic and British justice and all the rest of it, so I appealed. But unfortunately, the appeal judge turned out to be a very stern gentleman, and he didn't approve of people who were agitators, and particularly I suspect if they came from outside the UK. So he said, people who disobey the law will find the law will punish them. And he sentenced me to a month in Brixton, frightened the living daylights out of me. Yeah. So.
And as an Irishman, how were you received by the inmates?
Oh gosh, well, I tell you, when I went there, I thought they'd be all sympathetic towards me because I was innocent. So the first 2 guys I met, 2 tattooed cockneys, and they said, Pat, we was framed. So everybody met was innocent. But we all got on very well. But most of them were victims of circumstances, so that was another piece of learning. But I did my month, and the funny thing is, when I was leaving, I was walking down Jeb Avenue from the prison, and a big Jaguar roared up and stopped with a screech of brakes, and the door was flung open, and one of the 2 cockneys said, would you like a lift? We're going to Victoria. And then when I was leaving, he wrote down the number on the card. If you ever want a suit at a good price, give me a ring. So they were the innocent cockneys. Yeah.
I think after you got out, I mean, most people find it rather difficult to get a job having come out of prison. But I think our friends in AIB will enjoy this because you actually landed a job in a bank. Worked that one out.
They might reconsider their choice of career.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was I helped a guy who was a Portuguese refugee. He was in the anti-Salazar movement. That was the time of Franco in Spain and Salazar in Portugal. And he was arrested. He was trying to help the people in Angola. So Antonio de Figueiredo, his name was. And Antonio, I went to help him. He was translating his book from English to from Spanish, from Portuguese to English. And I went along to help him. I wasn't a great help, but he turned out to be a big help to me because he had a job in the bank in the city. And I said, "I'm looking for a clerk." And my ears shut up, I can tell you, and arranged an interview. It was a Russian bank in the city of London. And I got the job, and suddenly I was earning £20 a week. So I liked the banking life. But again, I didn't know anything really very important, and I was doing the bits and pieces of writing, and I wrote articles for the Irish press about Irish writers in London. Based, Wilde and Yeats and Brendan Behan, they all lived or cavorted in London. And so those stories went on well, and then I wrote stories for the Irish Post, that's a paper for Irish people living in England. And those sort of things kept my hand going as regards to writing. And then, of course, I got married when I was there, and later on we got divorced. But I did all sorts of things. Then I left the bank after 10 years, and I had a stall in Portobello Road, and that's when I met Harry Carnoff. I used to sell these woodcuts and prints in the Portobello Road. And remember, one time he came home to Ireland to pick up some more, and he apologised. The price had gone up from 12.6 to 15 shillings a print, and now you'd pay hundreds of euros to buy one of them. But Harry was a lovely man.
Yeah, I mean, most of the people you met in sort of the literati and the artists and so on, was that after you came back from
Before that, I met Brendan Behan,
was it
and I
before?
met Paddy Kavanagh once,
Right.
and I met J.P. Dunleavy and various people. But I was way on the outside. I was a young acolyte, really, but I had great admiration for them. And everybody talks about them as being permanently sodded and never having done a day's work. But they work bloody hard. It's very hard to, that's 2 years for me to do that book. But these guys, they wrote many books. They spend a lot of time working, and that's why in some of the books I try to play down the drinking image that they have acquired, because they were dedicated people. And I spoke to Dunleavy once about this, and he told me something that I really appreciated. He said there was one unifying force at that stage, at that time, that was James Joyce. He said only James Joyce's courage and perseverance kept us going, because there were difficult times. Writers lost their jobs and were bad, like John McGahern, they had to go off to England to get work. They lost their audience in Ireland, which is who their books were aimed at. So these guys had a rough time, and I was full of admiration for them. But as I say, I was sort of really way out in the periphery of all that. But then when I came back to Ireland later, I did my business to
get to know
to seek them out.
Yeah.
But I met being on those people before I left Ireland.
And Parsons Bookshop was a place now that seemed to be a unifying force for all these people.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us a bit about that institution, because there was an institution.
Well, that's right. It run by the five ladies. Mayor Flaherty from the west of Ireland was the manager, and Mayor Flaherty was the owner, sorry, and Mary King from the west of Ireland, who was a more down-to-earth and not such a pious lady, was the manager. But I admired him, because when I left England, I left Ireland in 1961, came back in 1985 when my mother was ill in the nursing home, and the ladies were just as I left them 25 years before, and I had great admiration for them, and I went into it very often. For some reason we got on very well, and then the shop closed down in 1989, and I with Owen Walsh, an artist who lived in Back Streets, we organised a little drinks party for the ladies, and they were very pleased with that.
That was a surprise, though, wasn't it?
That was a big
Surprised for that.
Oh, that was a big surprise, yeah.
So you went across to Mooney's.
Went across.
Yeah.
Well, Mooney's was closed at that time.
Was it?
It become a bank at that stage. Heaven forbid. But so we went to a pub across the road, which would you believe is now called Bragatonia. So then we Gareth Fitzgerald came along, Mary Lavin came along, Beatrice Bean, who we knew fairly well, came, and some other artists from the area. And we had a nice understated evening, and the ladies waddled off into history. But I thought that we couldn't let them go without recording what they'd done for Irish literature and their impact on the Beckett Street area and in literature generally in Ireland. So that's how I got the idea for the book. And luckily I interviewed a lot of people who sadly are no longer with us. So it was good that I had the idea at that time. So I was able to write about it pretty accurately and enthusiastically.
Yes, yeah. And wasn't there a documentary made based on the book? Or inspired by it at least?
Yes, Alan Gilston, who's a member here, I believe, he compiled a documentary about two years ago or so. Yeah, and now we have someone here tonight, Tom Skinner. He's organising the first Bagatonia Festival. So I can force Tom Skinner. Yeah, oh there he is over there, yeah.
And when is that?
That's July, it's been launched.
The week running up to the 21st of September.
Of September.
21st of September.
And this is the first year?
It's the first year.
And what sort of format will it take?
There'll be 10 events during the week. That's the target. A relaunch of the second edition of the book.
Oh yeah.
Showing of the Alan Gilson's film. A poetry punch-up, as we're calling it, on the banks of the canal. And various other cultural, community and celebration events.
Fantastic. Well, that's great. Very good.
Bagatonia-festival.com.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll put that in the description of the YouTube video.
So, and you can all say that you were at the launch. Yeah, I can see summer schools and academics jetting in from all over the place in about 2 years' time.
So, Brendan, can I go back to one of your passions? I mean, I know writing is very much to the fore, but you were extremely heavily involved in motorsports.
Oh yeah.
Tell us about that, because you met some amazing people too, Erwin Senna and all these.
That's right, yeah. Well, the funny thing is I never met Senna. I interviewed him on the phone, but I met all the other guys.
Okay.
Yeah, the cycle race in the school, that was my first brush with speed, and then the bicycle racing. And then one village, or 1 year, the Circle of Ireland passed through my village. That's a motor rally every Easter. And I was amazed and thrilled and excited by all these lovely sleek sports cars and the accents of all the people, some from a far away at the north of Ireland and London and places. So the first day, nothing like that we've seen in our village since the last travelling show I love. So I was always interested in speed, and I had an idea. When I went to England then, at a certain time, I went to the racing school in Branch Hatch, and it wasn't very expensive, and I sort of was trained in the finer points of racing, and eventually, after I got divorced, I had a few bob and I bought a car and I went racing for about 2 or 3 years, and I came back to race in Ireland, where I'd raced bicycles in Phoenix Park. And in the 20s and 30s there were big races in Phoenix Park, the Irish Grand Prix and all that stuff. And I was sitting down waiting to go out for my second practice, and I realised I was following the footsteps of all these people, and then I realised nobody had really written about that period. And that was my first book. It was called Green Dust. And like our friend Crime Pays, it won an award in London. 1,000 smackaroonies. I didn't know myself. Huh?
Sterling.
Yeah, Sterling as well, yeah. So,
it was much needed.
much needed, yeah. So, and that led to another book about another event that had not been covered, in my opinion, well in Ireland. That was the Gordon Bennett race, the 1903 Gordon Bennett race. It is the biggest motor race of 1903. And it's the equivalent of Grand Prix races of the time. And all the world's top drivers came here, and the guy who won the race was the first guy who drove 1 mile a minute in a car, Camille Giannacci. He was killed subsequently in a shooting incident in Belgium in the Ardennes forest. But that book went on very well. A sort of a whipping yarn.
Tell me about the sort of places you visited, because I think you got one of these motor vans, didn't you, to travel around,
Oh yes.
so that you could save money on the accommodation.
Yes, I met two dodgy Australians and they introduced me to a camper van that had been owned by two vicars, I think. but I got the van for €500 and someone helped me equip it as a sort of a camper van. And then if I could bore you with a piece about my travels in Europe, very small, very short, I'm sure. I went traveling off to all the races, and I worked for the Observer, a Sunday newspaper in London, and then pardon? Oh, what was it there? Then I set off, the Daily Mail. I was Grand Prix correspondent for the Daily Mail. Don't tell anybody. It ruined a lot of my reputation. But so I went off traveling all over Europe to the races. But no, I'm very efficient tonight. I seem to have lost the pace. But it was great traveling down the dusty roads of Europe. And one day I was in Hockenheim in Germany. That was in Nürburgring, full of forests and I can't remember the mountains. And then I got on to the Spanish Dust Bowl of Jarama. Monte Carlo was a favourite before it became a fashion statement. And so I got to know all the drivers, and because I'd driven myself, I knew what questions to ask.
Yes.
So within a short time I could interview all the guys, and it was very au fait with their word, and they were happy to see me come. It's very funny, once Nicky Lodi came over to Ireland, and some of the guys were asking some questions, and they'd heard them all a million times, but he saw me there, and he called me over. So I asked him some pertinent questions, and he was very pleased with that. So, training pays,
Yes.
whatever activity you're involved in. Oh, don't worry about it. That might be it, yeah. Oh no, it's not. No, sorry. Thanks. No, we leave it. So, but it's great fun traveling around Europe, and all on a budget, because when you freelance, you work for 2 or 3 different people, and you're the last person out at the press office, and there'd be sweat pouring off you, and the other fellows, all the expenses would be whining and dining through the first course at this stage. And never mind, I was just jealous. Yeah, so that was the Grand Prix. No, that's not it. Oh, this might be it, sorry. Oh, no, that was it.
Mark there on the other side.
That's right, yeah. No, that's all right, no. So, determined to be lost.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Like my wife, determined to do something, it will be done.
So, Brendan, were you working out of England at this time when you were?
Oh yes, I was in London, yeah.
Okay. And at what stage did you come back to Ireland? Because I knew your mother was very unwell, and that really sort of changed your life quite a lot, because you did come back.
It did, yes.
Yeah.
And I was free to come back because I'd worked in the PR company for a while after taking a break from motor racing writing. But the father was sick, excuse me, he died rather suddenly, and the mother was in the home by herself. So she couldn't be left by herself really. I had a sister in Ireland, but I think they might have fallen out. So I made the decision to come back. And I didn't go back immediately, come over and back about every 3 weeks in the camper van. And a better version I had at this stage. But and I'll bring her out for a drive and all the rest of it. And that was very important for us to be able to recover her life again. And then I decided I couldn't do this piecemeal. So I go back to everything in London and came back here for good. Got bits and pieces of work and started freelancing for the Irish Press Group and for other newspapers and all the rest of it. But it's very funny coming back. All the people I knew years ago, they were all about 100, whereas I felt I was the same age, of course. it was, accommodation was a little bit expensive, but I survived. And then did I tell you because I'd done PR work in London, I tore out the yellow pages, PR pages from a telephone kiosk in Dublin, don't tell anybody. And I went through everyone, wrote to everybody about, nothing happened. So it was tough going. And then one day, sitting Marion Square feeling sorry for myself, and a fella came up, he says, do you know Hill and Norton up there? They're looking for a guy in PR. I told him about you. Why did you go up and say hello? So I went up to the Joe Dillon Public Relations. They were taken over by Hill and Norton. So Joe was impressed with me for some reason. Joe was a Spitfire pilot during the war. But he took me somewhere adventuring, and we got on well. And then he sent me to see the accountant. And the accountant said, will you be happy with 20,000? I nearly collapsed. I'd been happy with 5,000. So I got 20,000. So then when I went down to the Village Society, I used to go periodically to them, hoping to buy a house. They welcomed me in and sat me down, how much do you want? So I got my little house in Portobello, and then that became a bigger house, which I bought on the north side, which I was able to rent when I went travelling later when the mother had passed on.
Yes.
But this book opens with the news of the mother's illness, and that's how I sort of why I came back to Ireland.
That was a very sad part of your life
Yes,
from what I read in the book.
Yeah, it was.
And one of your daughters came back for the funeral.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And I thought that was kind of interesting because you were having a meal with her one evening and you announced that you were going to hightail it over to Asia and wherever else. And she said, Dad, what are you on about? You're over 50.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine. Yeah. Oh, almighty. You're in your late 50s, like 56.
She said, you're not a teenage backpacker, yeah.
That's right.
So I said, and he was thinking of traveling. And it was as if he was donning his towels again for a bicycle race. He recalled Mary King's suggestion of that work on Bohemian Dublin. He could do it. He'd already prepared notes. And after all his years trying to escape the place, how about recording his village and his characters and a way of life that was fast disappearing into the shadows? 2 books, a good start to his life. His limbs tingled. He was in control once more. He had re-established a relationship with his mother. He could surely do the same with his daughters. The daughters weren't too pleased with the divorce. So, and then Laura toasted, but are you really thinking of traveling again? I've waited too long. Now, with my mother gone, I'm finally free to move. Artist Pete Hogan has just returned from sailing around the world. I think I'll try Asia before I get any older. New cultures, new towns, the brows of new hills. I've read of cheap bungalows on Thailand, Koh Samui. I can live well on a small budget. I'm already planning my library, Le Carre, Cervantes, unread classics, and Tom Sharp for diversion. Reading and writing in the sun, motorcycling around the island, savouring healthy food and fruit. Can you think of any better life? And Laura put on her knife and fork. Get a grip, for heaven's sake. Treat yourself to a break in Greece or Italy. You're too ancient for that long distance stuff. You're on the wrong side of 50, not a teenage backpacker. So I had to remonstrate with her. I said to old Montderrier, the best treats are those for which you've waited longest. Derlin Murphy cycled to India in her 30s. Yachtsman Tristan Jones circumnavigated the earth at 50. Being old is an accident. What matters is what one does, not statistics. Curiosity is life. There is so much out there to see, explore, enjoy. Who else will do it for me? And I'll have you know, seniority has its compensations. Once inaccessible studies open like spring flowers in the light of wisdom and experience. You're being a bit optimistic of him. Time suddenly so precious is best appreciated and utilized. Life begins at 55. And then he concluded as Living on the edge keeps you on your toes. More excitement, more fun. It sharpens the observation, enhances the appetite. I'm well used to it. I'll survive. And don't forget, I now have a house to rent. And the daughter says, my father a landlord, whatever next. But think hard about Asia. Life's cheap there. Many foreigners disappear or die in road accidents. Are you aware of malaria, hepatitis, dengue fever, and the many other illnesses you can contract? I fulfill my responsibilities and I'm off. Spectating is death. One lives only with movement and challenge. One makes one's own reality. And she retorted, that reminds me of the graffiti I saw on World's End last week. Reality is a delusion induced by alcoholic deficiency.
There's some wonderful anecdotes in that, and one particular one I found, which I think I have it here, but I'll just try and remember it, was your mother, because she knew you were going back to that pagan land, and was so old, she used to stuff his pockets with holy medals, in the hope that one day, he might be converted.
Yeah.
And he tells the story, and I'm not sure what part of your life it was, so I better be very careful. You were down in Buckwaley's on Leeson Street.
Oh yes, when I come back to work.
Yes, and he was obviously trying to hone his skills of picking up ladies. And that's why I said, I'm careful. And anyway, this woman said, why don't you ring me sometime and we'll meet up,
Music.
Yeah, and he said, oh God, I'm made, So he said, give me your number or something like that. And he started to dash around for a pen, and out poured a load of holy medals. So I think she ran when she saw it. But there's some wonderful anecdotes.
A few stories. Well, the thing is, you don't get to a certain age without accumulating a bit of experience and without seeing various aspects of the human condition. So, no great wisdom involved. It's, those statistics.
So, what have you planned for the future?
Well, now I am reprinting the Prodigies and Geniuses, the book about Bagatonia, and having a few hiccups with that. So, stress and strain, but we'll get over that. And I'm also writing another book on literary Dublin, which will definitely be the last book, because it's a bit tricky when you get older putting all the strands together. And although my mind is pretty adept, but one has to be aware of these things. So I plough on at that, and the funny thing is I enjoy the work, and one of the reasons I did all of these things was because I felt that otherwise these events and these places and these people would not have been recorded. Yes. So there are other people come along later and make their videos or do whatever they want to do, but I get this established. So that's why I stuck with it, and I enjoy it very much. It's part of my life. And I was very privileged. I met some very interesting. Oh, I forgot my Brendan Lynch.
You did?
I met many people, and people that I admire, and people who did make a name for themselves and leave something behind them. But part of it might have been my father's work ethic, and he always had a motto. And I remember this when I was polishing the toilets in Brixton. That was my job in Brixton. I was a toilet cleaner, and he said, whatever you do, because there was class distinction in the village. The people that had a bit of land would be looking down on someone who had less land. People with less land would be looking down on the poor road sweepers and all the rest of it. He said, whatever you do it well, and that's what the important thing is. So that always stuck with me. So maybe he and the mother are over my shoulder all the time, cracking the whip. You never know.
Okay, let's go to the audience and ask if you have any questions. I'm sure you do. Yes, Mary.
Can Brendan tell us about meeting Margie?
Yes, of
Oh,
course.
yes, yeah, she was hoping, you would say, well, that was because I went to Asia. And if I hadn't been so bold as to go to Asia, I wouldn't be in the mess I'm in now. I consider myself to be very lucky. Oh yes, I went to Thailand. The people were very nice. The language was a problem. So I met a lot of Australians there. Australia's not far from Philippines, and the Australians are always wandering around in that area. So a lot of them told me to go to Philippines, where a lot of people speak English. So I went to Philippines, and there, of course, you can't get away from the writing. I had an idea. Jose Rizal, the guy who helped to free the Philippine people from the Spaniards, and was executed by the Spanish people for his pains. His girlfriend was a lady of Irish origin. Her name was Bracken, Josephina Bracken. So I thought, well, then I'd go there, I'd be able to do a story in Josephina. So I went to where Rizal was exiled before the Spanish killed him, and I did all the usual pilgrimaging, and I learned a lot about him. But then one day I'm in Manila, flying back to Ireland, and the plane is held up, and it's very hot, 35 degrees. So I decided to follow Rizal's footsteps from the prison where he was taken to the place where he was executed. And it's about a mile of a walk, but in the heat I was knackered by the time I got there, and so I went into a pharmacy, and I said, would you have any cure for a headache? And I met this young one in the pharmacy, she was about a third of my age at the time, and she had a lovely big smile. And the first question she asked, not about my headache, but she said, "Are you taking any other medicines?" And I said, "What the hell is this one now about? Got one ache and I tried to cure it, we talked about the other illnesses afterwards." And her name was Margie. And her smile almost cured me on the spot. So, that's how we met. And then was very funny. Don't tell everything. No, I won't tell everything, But I thought it would be great if Margie could come over to Ireland. And I postponed my departure, and I left to the Irish Embassy. I met a guy there over some reason. I think I told him about the writing. He got me a visa in no time. Then I went to the British Embassy because we had to stop over in London, but they were less forthcoming, and they delayed on the thing, so I went back to Dublin. But in any case, Margie got a visa, and she flew over to Dublin, and I was at London Airport to meet her. And she had a backpack on her back, and that was her whole life. A bit like me going to Wales. I used to travel with a backpack, everything was in there. That was Margie's life. So then we were together for about 6 months, but then Margie would have to go back to the Philippines if she couldn't renew her visa no longer. And so eventually one night, in a certain establishment, not very far from here, I popped the question to Margie. I said, in the bar downstairs, I said, but seriously, dangerous place, I'll never come back. She said, I asked, would you like to marry me? And she, unfortunately for her, she said yes. So that's how we got married. And I still remember it there. What was the name of the lady with the high heels? Fond of a job.
Muriel.
Oh, Muriel. One of her best friends was Muriel.
Muriel Allison.
Muriel Allison, that's right. She used to tiptoe around and high heels. But Muriel was the first to see. And then Linus Bannister, who was another man, nevertheless, also gone. And Peter Stevens, the architect, also unfortunately gone. But they were the first to congratulate us. But
And that's how we met.
That's how you met.
That's how.
There are two people here who were at your wedding.
Oh yes,
Am I right?
that's right.
Panner and Trassa.
Panner and Trassa.
Front row.
Or where?
Lovely
It's lovely ready, yes.
Well, nice. Yeah, we went to Kildare Street, and then must have been the mother's influence. We went to St Anne's, where Bram Stoker had been married, for a few prayers. And John McMahon, a public relations man who gave me work when he came back to Ireland, a very nice man. John came and said a few prayers. And so money exchanged hands for the Church Restoration Fund and the organist, and everybody's very happy. And then we went to a restaurant in Bag Street now called Hugo's. And Margie got a surprise when she came out. What was the
It
surprise?
was a carriage.
Oh.
A horse and cart.
It was a carriage. Yes.
And did you like the idea of a carrot?
Well, I do.
Yeah, but she thought it was for another wedding or something. And then what happened?
Oh, yes. Brendan said, get in. I said, well, he ordered me around.
He didn't know.
That's for you.
The
That's
other way
for
around.
you, he said. So I didn't like it. That was a lovely surprise. Very nice.
Yeah. So we went around the street. It was Christmas, 22nd of December 1997, was it?
Oh, he
And
remembers.
it was it was one of the last weddings in the registry office. And we were around the streets and everybody was waving like that. And we all went around the Bag Street and the thing. But all this was done, by the way, on a budget, which is just shows that imagination can go a long way and bring a lot of nice surprises. Yeah, sorry, I thought a bit
No,
long-winded.
that's great, thank you. Anybody got a question?
What's the photograph?
Huh?
What's the photograph?
Oh, we forgot.
Oh, the photograph, I forgot the photograph, yeah, this is, you have a look, this is Brendan. I met him in Mooney's one night, and I got a press photograph from the Irish press and asked him if he'd sign it. And he made me, so you carry this stuff home. So Beach was with him. So the three of us were carrying drink back to his place. And here's me a few minutes ago saying these people didn't drink much. Anyhow, he carried the spirits, I know that. But when we got down to the house, Beatrice said he's not in fit form to be signing anything. So I went back the following night and he signed the photograph. And it was like a capuchin monk. It was with a pair of slippers on him, and he was pattering around the floor. He was doing his press. He did a column for the Irish Press at the time, and underneath a calendar that Liam O'Flaherty had signed for him. But he signed it for me. You can have a look at this one Brendan to the other, and then I went back later and Beatrice signed it. And then when I went to London, I came back and he signed a copy of Porcelain Boy for me, which wasn't available here. But I met him about 3 or 4 times. I was in his house in Bridge. They moved there from 15 Herbert Street. I also knew the father and mother. They were lovely people. Stephen, the father, he was what he used to call in Ireland years ago, a failed priest. And Kathleen was the sister of the guy who wrote the National Anthem, Carney. And I went to interview her once when I was living in London. I gave over my tape recorder, had a great interview. I brought 2 baby Powers. The first baby Power disappeared in about 5 minutes, and then she started singing. And it was the first singing interview I'd ever had. And so, actually, I always treasure that. But there were really Dublin people, very down-to-earth people. But Stephen, he spoke French, and he read to Balzac and all the other writers to the children when they were growing up. So that's where Brendan got his first education in literature in, yeah. And the mother, of course, education in another escapade. Yeah.
Yes.
But,
Okay, anybody else? Yes.
I was actually wondering, what would you say is the biggest or more valuable life lesson that you've learned?
Well, doing a bit of good work is very therapeutic. That's one lesson. If things get bad, you can really turn disadvantage to advantage very quickly if you can learn to train your mind that way. All the things I got involved with are all born out of quite severe disadvantage, as I see it. And the other thing is to learn, the theory is to learn not to be judgmental. I haven't quite succeeded in that. Yeah, but I'm very anti-violence, for example, and I can't be moved on that. Political violence or the other sort of violence. But you certainly learn a trick or two by experience, and everything has its compensations. And if you get older, which I strongly advise you against, you do accumulate wisdom, and you do see things in a different light, and you do enjoy things more. And of course, if you're running out of time, you'll enjoy your time even more for that reason. Yeah.
So how does Marty like Ireland?
Oh,
How does Margie like Ireland?
come over here. Sorry.
Speak right into it.
Oh.
I like Ireland. I'm quite happy living in Ireland. It took a little bit of time getting used to it, culture-wise, of course. Very, very different to where I come from.
Have your family visited?
No. It's probably, well, my mom and dad were supposed to come, but then my dad passed away. So my mom did not really have interest to travel after that. So that was it. I suppose having Brendan with me is a great support.
The other way around.
Well, more than real, probably no.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's very different to live in Ireland. It was great, but also when I started working, it was great. Yeah.
And
making friends.
you started to study because of what Pattern
Oh,
Trassa
yeah,
told us
Pattern,
one
yeah.
night.
Thank you,
Oh.
Pater. That was your idea to do
The pharmacy
the pharmacy division course. Yeah,
So are you working in a pharmacy?
I do.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, 2-year study, she became a pharmacy technician.
Wow.
Fantastic.
And the other thing, if I may interrupt, if that's okay, it's a lot of these books are a result of Margie's working, because I couldn't be writing up to about, say, 10 or 12 years ago, because I had to get a few bob in for journalism or whatever. But Margie's work enabled at least half a dozen books. So don't blame me anymore, blame
So
Margie.
weren't you the cute man to meet her in Manila?
Huh?
Weren't you the cute man to meet her in Manila?
Wasn't I just? Yeah. So I must have learned a few things from experience, yeah. But no, I was fortunate, yeah. But but I love going to the Philippines. It's too far away from me now. But for example, in the island of Negros Oriental, where her family now lives, we stay in a little town called Dumaguete, in a lovely hotel overlooking the sea. But I go out there and sit on the bench, and only be there 2 minutes, and people come up and start talking to me. But like Ireland in the 50s. And then the girls who come out of school, the boys and girls, and they sit down on the bench beside you. Where are you from? How old are you? How many children do you have? Are you married? All the usual questions, yeah. So people are very curious, and the big benefit for me going to Asia was I could live there for very little, and I learned an awful lot. But I met some lovely people there, including Margie, yeah.
Okay, Eileen, did you want to
Yes,
ask
I
a question?
was just interested, Brendan, in the fact that you had such a sense of being a free spirit from a very early stage. And, you know, I grew up in Ireland, I'd say close enough on to the time you're talking about, you know, the late 40s, early 50s.
Indeed.
It was very repressive, and but my own personal experience was you just went along with all that. And it was only when I started travelling and moving about and seeing other cultures that I broke out of that sense of accepting everything as it was then. I was just wondering what prompted you to break so freely and so quickly out of it
Well,
yourself.
I can see now that you're a much more patient and forgiving person than I was. But I know I was desperate really to bring up. I suppose the family upbringing was rather strict.
Yeah.
Their mother went to church 3 times a day, and if I wasn't going to school, I would go to church 3 times a day, which I didn't really mind at the time, but as I got older, it palled a bit. But they were quite controlling. But again, they'd been brought up
In that
very
way.
strictly, so I wouldn't give out about them. I would feel sorry for them as well. But I didn't see why I should have to live life to a formula or do any of these things. And then it was a great freedom when I started going to school, be cycling in and out every day, 14 miles, to think and to ponder about
Of course,
things.
yeah.
And just very nice getting off in the morning with the wind in your hair. You're away from the iron grip of the parents and everything else. And then I used to pass over a railway bridge, which fueled my fantasies even more. See all the trains heading off for Dublin, which is a day's journey away at that time. And and then, I didn't have your patience. The people who stayed in Ireland and did were much braver than I was. But we make our decisions and take our chances.
A lot of people would think the other way around, that you were braver
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
to go
Yeah.
Yeah. to break
even if there was nothing much to face here or to
Yeah.
look forward
Yeah.
to.
I was
At the time.
a desperate man, yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought there was, I found the English people were very, very decent. It was very slummy at that time, and the class distinction was, you don't have that in England anymore. But most of the English people I met were very decent and friendly. Of course, I was known as Pat. This is like 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And there was a bit of condescension, if not worse. My first adverts I saw when I was looking for accommodation was no Irish, no blacks, no dogs. So that wasn't very uplifting. But generally speaking, I found English much more broad-minded and much more generous. And whereas the people in Ireland, of course, living in the villages is different.
Yeah.
People gossip a lot, and they all go to church, but they didn't have a nice word to say
At
about
the
each
time.
other. Yeah, at that time,
At
yeah.
that time.
Now they're too busy on the television and the mobile phone to gossip, so the art of gossip is gone.
Yes.
But I did, in England, opened my eyes, and then Paris was only across the street. You know, you hop down to Dover, 75 miles on the ferry here in Paris, not 180 miles. So that opened up my mind as well. Sorry.
Just following on from Eileen's question, I'm from West Limerick, but I'm 50 years in Dublin. That's as far as I travelled. But I still would say to people, I'm from Limerick. Do you still feel connected to Tullivara, or because you strike me as a man of the world? Would you ever lose that?
She's going to throw me out the window if I tell her that I'm actually born in a place called Abbeyfield.
But you mentioned Tullivara there.
Yeah.
That's where he was
well-
brought up, yeah.
Yeah, well, the father,
Things
the
are-
guards had to move around.
Yes,
And
of
they
course.
weren't given a year's notice, and I wasn't long born when they moved to Tipperary.
Like just back the road from the centre.
Yeah, so he was Limerick.
Yeah, that's right, yeah, born of, but I've only seen the place once, and I always want to go back there. There's a woman from the Limerick Leader on the newspaper said she'd show me around if I go back. But I've never, I've been back to Limerick. I've only raced the bikes, I was in the Roslyn-Lee a couple of times.
Yeah.
Go back to the question, sorry.
Our sense of connection to the place we came from, even though between going to boarding school in the west of Ireland, I only spent 11 and a half years in West Limerick before I was
Yeah.
hither and thither.
Well, I tell you, well, maybe your childhood might have been more benign or more happy there than mine was. Not really, no. But then you were a more courageous person than I was. And I mean, I think that's very nice.
But if someone asks you, Brendan, you know, where you're from, what do you say?
Usually I would say I just happen to be born on this planet. That's my answer these days. Gets me out of all sorts of mischief.
That's sitting on the fence.
Which actually, yeah, well, fence setting, yeah. but I wouldn't say I'm from A or B or Z. And I was very affronted when I was off the first time hitchhiking in Europe. I got this anorak and I put a little tricolour on the anorak. And I'm hardly arrived in France, and a fellow says, "What part of Italy are you from?" So I know these things are important, but no, I have, but I feel a big attachment to the village in Tipperary, despite all the gossip, all the nonsense, and all the tribal politics, because that's where I grew up, and I grew up beside a river, and it was a nice place. So I would feel an attachment to there, but I mean, Limerick, unfortunately, I didn't know that well. But I've been back there twice, and I met the Lord Mayor of Limerick once. I finished high up in the bike race, and he presented me with a dynamo for my bicycle. If you were racing bike, you don't need a dynamo. It made somebody happy. Sorry? Sorry. Yeah. So, but Dublin, well, I'm not so fond of Dublin anymore. I was very fond of Dublin, but when I see the damage they've caused, tearing down historic places and buildings, oh, it sort of alienated me. And the part of Dublin I love most is just the Georgian quarter, this area in the canal where all the writers and the artists hung out in the 50s. I feel an affinity with that. Am I still connected to the road? No, but my parents' anniversary is next 2 weeks' time, so we'll go down.
Will you?
We'll do a grand tour, yeah.
Okay, okay.
And
All right, any other questions?
Would you support the Tip hurling team?
well, the reason I took up bike racing was because I couldn't see very well, so and I was a good hurler, but I couldn't hurl, and other sports became more interested in me. Well, I went off to hurling a little bit, because I go to Nina to the big matches, and I'm not kidding you, there'd be stretcher parties running in and out, carting people off the field, you know, beaten up by hurlers and all the rest of it. So that sort of put me off the hurling. And the funny thing is, I have a big scar here from a hurling. There's a fellow called Matt O'Gara. He played for the Tipperary team, but he hit me once and he hit the hoop on his hurling. Gouged a big hole in my thing. So maybe that put me off hurling for I got it from her, yeah.
The Arts Club features quite a bit in your books, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. I was very fond of the Arts Club because I met some severely impractical people in here who were more interested in art and literature than they were in schooling people for money and to be outside. So I became very fond of the place. I lost the membership fees went up a little bit, more than my budget could manage. So I had to take early retirement.
You got some painters, Brendan, didn't you, in Bennett Street? You got the painters.
There were, yeah. I knew another man who was slung out of here many times. Owen was. I used to meet Owen, and there were quite a few, but all the people I knew were, some of them are missing now. Arthur Armstrong, I remember, and a man who was very fond of Seamus O'Cole-Mohan.
Oh yes, he was a member.
Seamus is gone.
In fact, his daughter is a member.
His daughter, yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah.
That's Eamon Coleman's father.
That's right, yeah. But it's a lovely ambience, and with all the pictures and the paintings and all the rest of it. And there was a bar where you paid a little bit less than you paid in other bars for sustenance. So Arts Club was a lovely ambience. I felt when I arrived in here first, I sort of felt I was at home. That was very nice. Because when I got back to Dublin, I didn't know what to be coming back to a strange city. Very strange. Only 25 years. That's a long time, you know. Sorry.
Okay, unless there are any other questions, I think we might wrap up. Yeah, okay, all right. So Brendan and Martin, thank you both very, very much for coming along this evening. It was an absolute eye-opener, a lovely trip down memory lane as well. And I have to say you're as sharp as a whip. I can hardly remember what I did yesterday. And yet you're reading off all these names and places that, you know, just mind-boggling.
You know, they're the ones I remember. I don't remember
I go
what
on
it is.
now. It's enough, believe me, to write a book.
And I would like to say thanks to you all for coming. You're very kind, and Tom, good luck with the Bagatoni Festival. And
Thank you for having us.
thanks very much, Amelia, for the interview. Yeah, thank you.
Just thank you so very much, Brendan. Brendan came here to launch his last book, the Graffantonian one, and we had packed house, no? Do you remember? Pather and Trassa instigated, but we had this packed house. And I think I might have fallen in love with Margie that night, if you understand me, because she's a Wonder Woman, really. You know, she truly is, and the rest of it. But they're just a wonderful couple, and to be. He couldn't admit his true age, but he's actually 87.
I can remember.
1937, work it out.
Yeah.
That sharp and that interesting and that Margie, you did well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Margie.
Please join us in the bar downstairs, and we can.
And the books.
And the books, of course.
Well, there's a few books there. He didn't bring many, but and if you want to have a look at the poor Brendan, there he is there. Yeah. I'm like my mother in the room.
I'm sure you got God save you.